The CEO's baby suddenly stopped breathing at 30,000 feet. And for 7 terrifying seconds, the entire world seemed to stop with her. The tiny infant had been laughing only moments earlier, kicking her little legs against her mother's arm as the airplane cruised through a blanket of white clouds somewhere above the Atlantic Ocean. Passengers were watching movies, sipping coffee, and dozing in their seats. Then everything changed. A soft cough, a strange gasp, and silence. The baby's eyes rolled upward. Her body went limp. The young mother froze. "Emma," she whispered. No response. "Emma." Panic exploded across her face. "Emma." Her scream sliced through the cabin. Every head turned. Flight attendants rushed forward. Passengers ripped off headphones. The baby's father jumped from his seat, his face draining of color. "What's wrong?" he shouted. "She's not breathing." The words hit him like a freight train. Michael Harrington was a man who solved problems for a living. As CEO of one of America's fastest-growing technology companies, he managed billion-dollar decisions before breakfast. But none of that mattered now. His daughter wasn't breathing. And he was helpless. "Do something," he yelled. A flight attendant immediately called over the intercom. "Is there a doctor on board? We have a medical emergency. Please identify yourself immediately." The cabin fell into a horrifying silence. People looked around. Waited. Hoped. Nobody stood. Michael felt his heart pounding so hard it hurt. The flight attendants began emergency procedures. But fear was spreading through the crew's faces. The baby's lips were turning blue. 30,000 feet above the ocean. Hours from landing. No hospital. No emergency room. No second chances. Michael grabbed his daughter's tiny hand. "Please," he whispered. "Please don't leave us." Then a voice came from the back of the plane. "Move." It wasn't loud. But something about it carried authority. A man stepped into the aisle. Most passengers hadn't noticed him before. He wore faded jeans, old sneakers, and a gray sweatshirt that had clearly seen better days. He looked exhausted. Ordinary. Forgettable. The kind of person people pass every day without a second glance. Yet his eyes were calm. Focused. Steady. "I'm not a doctor," he said. Disappointment flashed across several faces. But he continued. "I was a pediatric respiratory therapist for 15 years. The flight attendants immediately stepped aside. "Can you help?" one asked. "I can try." The men knelt beside the baby. Michael stared at him desperately. "Please save her." The stranger nodded once. Then he went to work. His movements were quick but controlled. He checked the baby's airway. Tilted her head gently. Listened for breathing. Nothing. He glanced at the mother. "How long?" "Maybe 30 seconds, she sobbed. The stranger took a breath. "Okay." He positioned the infant carefully. Then began rescue breaths. The cabin became eerily silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Hundreds of eyes watched. 1 breath. 2 breaths. Nothing. 3 breaths. Still nothing. Michael felt hope slipping away. His wife was crying uncontrollably. The stranger remained calm. "Come on, sweetheart," he whispered to the baby. Another breath. Then another. And suddenly, a cough. Tiny. Weak. But unmistakable. The baby's body jerked. A small cry escaped her lips. Then another. Louder this time. The cabin erupted. Gasps. Tears. Applause. People covered their mouths. Flight attendants cried openly. Michael nearly collapsed from relief. His wife pulled Emma into her arms and sobbed against her tiny shoulder. The baby was breathing. Alive. Beautifully alive. For a moment, nobody said anything. They simply listened to the sound of the infant crying. It was the most beautiful sound any of them had ever heard. Michael turned toward the stranger. His eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." The men smiled softly. "She's going to be okay." The plane eventually diverted to the nearest airport where medical teams boarded immediately. Doctors examined Emma thoroughly. The diagnosis was frightening but treatable. A sudden airway obstruction had temporarily prevented her from breathing. The quick intervention had likely saved her life. Likely. That word haunted Michael. Because he knew what it really meant. Without that stranger, his daughter might not have survived. Hours later, after doctors confirmed Emma was stable, Michael finally found the men sitting alone in the terminal. He was drinking coffee from a paper cup, looking out a window, as if he hadn't just become a hero. Michael approached carefully. "Mind if I sit?" The men shrugged. "Sure." Michael sat down. For a moment neither spoke. Then Michael asked the question that had been bothering him. "Why weren't you working as a respiratory therapist anymore?" The stranger stared into his coffee. A shadow crossed his face. "My son." Michael waited. The men swallowed. "He got cancer when he was 9. Michael's chest tightened. "We spent years fighting it." His voice grew quieter. "Eventually, I quit my job to stay with him." "What happened?" The stranger looked out the window. "He died." The words landed heavily between them. "I'm sorry," Michael said. "Me too." For several seconds neither man spoke. Then the stranger smiled sadly. He loved airplanes. Michael glanced toward the runway. "Really?" "Yeah. He always wanted to travel the world." The men chuckled softly. "Every time I fly, I think about him." Something inside Michael broke. Not because of the tragedy, but because of what came after it. This man had suffered the worst loss imaginable. Yet when another child needed help, he stepped forward without hesitation. No bitterness. No anger. No resentment. Just compassion. Michael suddenly realized something. People often talked about heroes. Athletes. Celebrities. Business leaders. But real heroes rarely looked like that. Sometimes they wore old sneakers and carried invisible scars. Sometimes they sat quietly at the back of airplanes. The next morning, news of the incident spread online. Passengers posted videos. Witnesses shared stories. Within hours, millions of people had watched clips describing how a stranger saved a baby's life during a flight. Reporters wanted interviews. Television stations called. Social media exploded. Everyone wanted to know who the hero was. The stranger refused every request. "No thanks," he told reporters. "I didn't do anything special." But the internet disagreed. People tracked down his name. David Cooper. 47 years old. Widower. Former respiratory therapist. Part-time warehouse worker. Living in a small apartment outside Cleveland. When Michael learned those details, he was